Go.
Duck.
Duck. Yes. Hi. Welcome to Victoria Knits. I'm Victoria. And as you can see from that intro, the ducks are growing really fast. Their feathers are coming in strong, which is how they stay warm. And I'll do a duckling update later on in this episode. But let's address this mess first. Yeah. I wish I had a really exciting story to tell about it, but it's not. I went to the dermatologist, and I had a couple, three spots I wanted her to look at. She found 5, which she felt needed to be biopsied, and she thinks they're all cancer. But you know, hopefully they're just the skin cancer stuff, and it won't be too serious. But what I'm going to do during this podcast is try to keep myself off camera most of the time, because nobody really wants to look at this. And trust me, the Band-Aids are much better than if I didn't have the Band-Aids on. So there is that. I have some good news. Kim, my husband, finished building our sauna. It's called a cordwood sauna. And if you Google cordwood sauna, you'll see all kinds of nice designs. I really love the one Kim came up with. He bought a book on them, and he started building it this past April. It's been kind of a big deal all summer long as we watched it going up. And my grandson Russell even got in on the action. We've started making every Friday night sauna night at our house. Kim gets the fire going inside, and while my daughter and her husband put the kids to bed, Kim and I use it, and then we trade spots. And Kim and I have the easy job of listening in case the boys wake up while Vanessa and Chris use the sauna. We keep rocks in pans on the wood stove so we can add steam when we feel like it. And we each usually spend from 45 minutes to an hour in it. And it's been super relaxing. Vanessa says it feels like a little mini vacation every Friday night. And so far we've gotten our sauna up to 135 degrees Fahrenheit, but the optimal temperature according to Google is 150 to 175 degrees. But we're sweating plenty at 135. And you might ask, what are the benefits of using a sauna? Well, number 1 is relaxation. Number 2, it flushes toxins from the body. Number 3, if used often enough, and I would really like this to be something that helps us, but we're only using it once a week right now. But if you use it more often than that, it reduces the incidences of Alzheimer's by 65%. I think that takes like maybe 4 to 7 times in the sauna per week. It induces a deeper sleep. Number 5, it reduces incidences of colds and flu. And number 6, you burn calories due to the acceleration of your heart activity. And the number 1 reason, it just feels really good. And look at this view coming out at night. I think it's really pretty when we step out of the sauna after we're done. So right now, Kim and I are in the town of Ronan. And yes, it is actually, the name is pronounced Ronan, not Ronan. Kim and I thought it was Ronan when we first moved to Montana, but it is pronounced Ronan. It has about 2,000 people here, and it is located on the Flathead Indian Reservation. So we are on the Flathead Indian Reservation right now. It's about 12 miles south of Flathead Lake, and they named it in honor of Major Peter Ronan. He was the superintendent of the Flathead Indian Reservation from 1877 until he died in 1893. An Indian agent is the person authorized to interact with Native Americans on behalf of the government. And here we are driving into Ronan. We're still on the highway here. You don't need to see a lot of this. I'll speed this up quite a bit. You can't really see much from the highway. What you can notice here is how overcast it is. It was so cloudy that day. Pretty disappointing. And now Kim is turning onto the downtown area. Not much to look at here either. The town's a little run down, to tell you the truth. Not a whole lot going on there, as you can see. A lot of the businesses were closed. But we did find a place to have lunch. We ate at the Ronan Cafe and Bakery, and I'm happy to say it was really good. It was really cute inside. Nice size restaurant, really clean. I thought the menu was kind of interesting, an Indian taco. There's Kim. He was happy because he had biscuits and gravy. And now we're going to look at some pictures of the Mission Mountains near Ronan. This is how they could have looked today, except it wouldn't have been so green. We took these pictures a couple of years ago when we were there with our friend Britt. But I wanted to talk about the Flathead Indian Reservation. I mentioned that the name of the town was named after Major Pete Ronan, and he was the Indian agent. And when I thought about how to explain what a reservation is, I wasn't sure I knew how to do that. So I looked it up. A reservation is an area of land managed by Native American tribes under the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. There are approximately 310 Indian reservations in the United States, although there are more than 550 federally recognized tribes. This is because some tribes have more than one reservation, some share reservations, while other tribes have none, often due to a lack of federal recognition. Because of past land allotments, some reservations are fragmented with pieces of tribal, individual, and privately held land, some of it owned by non-Indians. The collective geographical area of all reservations is 55.7 million acres, or about 2.3% of the area of the United States. The name reservation comes from the belief that tribes were independent sovereigns at the time the U.S. Constitution was ratified. Early treaties for land also designated parcels which the tribes, as sovereigns, a term used to describe the concept of Indian nations' right to govern themselves, reserved for themselves. Those parcels came to be called reservations. The term remained in use even after the federal government began to forcibly relocate tribes. Today, tribes possess tribal sovereignty, even though it is limited by federal and state local law. Laws on tribal lands vary from the surrounding area. The tribal council, not the local or federal government, generally has jurisdiction over reservations. Different reservations have different systems of government. And as you drive around Ronan, or any of the parts of the reservations around here, you will notice that people appear to be poor. So I had to kind of look that up. And I found an article called "Why Are Indian Reservations So Poor?" And here's some excerpts from that article. At a time when there's a spotlight on America's richest 1%, a look at the country's 310 Indian reservations, where many of America's poorest 1% live, can be more enlightening. To explain the poverty of the reservations, people usually point to alcoholism, corruption, or school dropout rates, not to mention the long distances to jobs and the dusty, undeveloped land that doesn't seem good for growing much. But those are just symptoms. Prosperity is built on property rights, and reservations often have neither. They're a demonstration of what happens when property rights are weak or non-existent. The vast majority of land on reservations is held communally. That means residents can't get clear title to the land where their home sits. One reason for the abundance of mobile homes on reservations. This makes it hard for Native Americans to establish credit and borrow money to improve their homes because they can't use the land as collateral, and investing in something you don't own makes little sense anyway. This leads to what economists call the tragedy of the commons. If everyone owns the land, no one does. So the result is substandard housing and the barren, rundown look that comes from a lack of investment, overuse, and environmental degradation. It's a look that's common worldwide, wherever secure property rights are lacking. Much of Africa and South America, inner city housing projects, and rent-controlled apartment buildings in the United States and on Indian reservations. The author goes on to talk about the lack of income from Indian casinos and the mistrust Indians have of capitalism. Privatizing land is fine, but it falls far short of the answer, says Bill Yellowtail, a former Crow official and a former Montana state senator. Our people don't understand business. After 10 or 15 generations of not being involved in business, they've lost their feel for it. Capitalism is considered threatening to our identity, our traditions. Successful entrepreneurs are considered sellouts. They're ostracized. We have to promote the dignity of self-sufficiency among Indians. End quote. And I thought it was really interesting, and I will link to that article below. And for further reading, Peter Ronan wrote this book called A Great Many of Us Have Good Farms. They include his letters from 1877 to 1887, when the Salish and Kootenai navigated crises that could have destroyed the tribes. In 1877, the tribes worked hard to stay out of the Nez Perce War, after which they then had to avoid conflict with white settlers who could mistake them for hostiles, and a government that tried to deprive them of guns and ammunition for hunting and self-defense. The Bitterroot Valley Salish struggled to preserve their right to live in their traditional homeland. The letters, an 1884 photographic tour of the reservation, and a biographical sketch of Ronan provide a rich and exciting journey through 19th century Flathead Indian reservation history. And thank goodness for that, right? And since we were down that way and I hadn't been in it yet and I wanted to, we stopped at the People's Center, which is a tribal museum of the Salish and Kootenai tribes. This was the entrance to it, the rotunda. It was really, really pretty. And as we walked into the main part of the museum, they had recordings going where Native Americans had recorded their stories or just various different things that happened. It was really interesting to listen to. I really enjoyed this museum. They had some great exhibits in there. It was really nice. Just take a look at the work on those pants. That's crazy. And I really love the photographs. I always find those so interesting. Probably the hardest part was this display out front. In the United States, Native American women are more than twice as likely to experience violence than any other demographic. 1 in 3 Native women is sexually assaulted during her life, and over 85% of these assaults are perpetrated by non-natives. Many reservations have become popular destinations for rapists and serial killers. Law enforcement, journalists, and activists in indigenous communities in both the U.S. and Canada have fought to bring awareness to this connection between sex trafficking, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and the women who go missing and turn up murdered. But our next destination was Lake Mary Ronan. It was a very pretty drive out there. So look, I think you can barely see me. This works out great, right? So I want to talk about some finished things. I finished my Denon socks by Jan Swarbrick. The yarn is a sock blank by SSK Yarners. I really enjoyed these socks. I will stick in some pictures here because I gave these socks as a birthday present to my friend Carol in Boise, Idaho. Hi, Carol. And she said she really liked them. Now, I did block these socks, and you can see the difference here. And I'll show you the curliness of how curly the sock blank is when it comes off. And this cute little tag that Karen from SSK Yarners put on the start of the sock blank. I think that was really nice. And you remember the last time I talked about them, I think that was probably up at Marion Lake. And Jan had said about this pattern, this sock was inspired by us driving over the bridge at the beautiful scenic port of Dinan, Brittany, France. The cable represents the river dance, the river Rance, not river dance, as my spell check corrected it to. The river Rance, meandering under the bridges, and the people wandering along taking in the sights on either side of the river. If you Google the port of Dinan, you'll see there are many restaurants to stop for lunch or just a glass of wine and watch the world go by. Such a picturesque place, and the first place I visited many years ago and got me hooked on France. So yeah, I think the pattern turned out really, really well. I totally get what Jan's talking about with France, because my husband and I went there 13 years ago. I'll show you some pics of us. I was a lot younger 13 years ago. Vanessa went with us for their first 10 days, and it was a great trip. We spent a month in Italy, France, and Morocco. Visited the cousin I had just found out I have. I have a French cousin named Francois. I have mentioned him on this podcast before, but we got to spend some time with him. It was, you know, the trip of a lifetime, and really loved it. So I totally get what Jan's talking about. There are so many picturesque places there. We spent most of our time down mostly in the south of France, because he lives in Toulouse. We were in the Périgord area. It was just gorgeous, of course. It was beautiful. But thank you so much, Jan, for sending me that pattern. I have really, really enjoyed it. And another thing I finished were my friendship socks. And here they are. Oh, they turned out so nice. Look at that. I love that yarn. The yarn was a gift from my friend Linda. Hi, Linda, from Joy Scarf Podcast. The pattern was a gift from my friend Sandy in Arizona. Hi, Sandy. The pattern is called Collie Wobbles. Very pretty. Really enjoyed those. And they fit really nicely too. It's a little chilly out here. That's why I got gloves on. It's like 32. It's chilly. I also finished those Green Bay socks for my son and his family. Here's my son's. I'll stick in a picture here of the entire family socks. They turned out really nicely. Now I bought 2 skeins of this. This is that biscuit yarn, Green Bay biscuit yarn. I bought 2 skeins of it so I'd have enough to do all 4 pair of socks, and I had plenty. My only complaint, I love this yarn, and yes, I would definitely buy from them again. The yarn is super soft, plump, feels great. Okay, I had one complaint, and that complaint is in the second skein of yarn, there was a knot. I came across a knot. I do not expect knots in yarn I buy from dyers like this. Do you? I find that a little annoying. I expect knots in skeins of yarn that are cheap. But that was my only complaint. I got past it, lived through that. This Christmas present's finished. Something else I finished was that Mystery Cow shawl with Cecilia Lasada. I like the way it turned out. I think it's really, really pretty. I think that's really nice. I love all the texture work she had on that. So nice. I think I messed up on this shawl. She had us do one of those little, what is it called, garter stitch tabs to start it with. I don't think I did so great a job with that. I think mine turned out too long. It's kind of obnoxious. Yeah, it kind of dips down. I'm not sure what to do with that, but I ran out of pink on this shawl. I ran out of the pink, and so I had to find another color, and I used that purple. And didn't that work out nicely? Holy cow, I love that. I just think that turned out really, really well. That was the perfect mistaken addition to that shawl. Just so nice. And here's another version of that shawl. This is by Star Rose Knit 20. Her name is Assumpta, and she lives in Spain. And she said I could use this picture of the shawl she knit. I thought it was really pretty, and I thought it'd be nice to see one that was quite a bit more subtle looking than the bright one I made. I think this is really pretty. So here is Lake Mary Ronan. Their website says it's an ample-sized lake of over 1,500 acres. Lake Mary Ronan's average depth is 28 feet with a maximum depth of 69 feet. It boasts of excellent kokanee and other species and is a haven for ice fishermen in the winter, which I can well imagine. So the whole start of this trip to Ronan and to Mary Ronan Lake, of course, involved a book I read called Girl from the Gulches, the story of Mary Ronan as told to Margaret Ronan, who was her daughter. Mary Ronan was born in 1852 and died in 1940. And in the first 5.5 pages of the book, Mary talks of traveling in a covered wagon from Kentucky to Indiana, and from Indiana to Illinois, then Iowa, then Missouri, and finally to Colorado. She recounts how a strange man tried to coax her to trade her baby brother for a doll, how that same baby brother ended up being trampled to death by oxen, which was said to lead to the early death of her uncle. He, in the story, he sets the baby on a stump out in the field while he talks to one of his sons who is working there. And oxen get closer and closer to the baby. The baby falls off the stump and it's quickly trampled by the oxen. Really sad. Her mother gave birth to a baby girl who lived just 2 weeks, and when her father waded a swollen stream to take the body to a cemetery for burial, the house in which they were living burned to the ground. And when her mother was carried out of the house from her sick bed, she caught cold and died in less than a week. The only item Mary had of her mother's was a parasol, which she lost once while out riding. Other than that, she had a lock of her mother's hair, which she treasured, since she had no idea what her mother looked like, as she had no picture of her. Mary spent time living with various family members or friends of her father's. During one of these stays, the Civil War began, and they woke to find the Negro servants gone and the horses also. Another night, the children were wakened and told to dress quickly out of fear that Union soldiers would come and burn the house down. Luckily, her father returned, having remarried and having established a little store in Nevada, Colorado, to which they now headed. So I found this book, I thought it was really, really interesting. Especially the pioneer parts. I thought they were pretty much fascinating to me. And remember, the part I just explained happened in the first 5.5 pages of the book. So, in the book, Mary says, the accounts of hardship, of suffering, of fear one reads in the diaries actually written from day to day by emigrants of the 60s left little impression on me. The monotonous miles of jolting, weariness, illness, cold, heat, acrid dust, alkali water, mosquitoes, cactuses, rattlesnakes, perilous ascents and descents on scarcely broken roads, terrifying fordings of great rivers, dread of lurking Indians, apprehension that the parting from loved ones back home was for life, and forebodings that new surroundings might hold worse, not better fortunes, are not what I remember. I can picture in my mind gorgeous sunsets gliding behind distant mountain peaks and flooding great valleys with magic light. Joyous, eager childhood and the rhythm of going, going, going combine to make a backdrop and a theme song for that long trek into the land of gold. She certainly sounded like quite the optimist as I read this book. And then reading from the book again. Almost every evening, the miners cleaned their sluice boxes with a tin contrivance called a scraper. Much fine gold was left in the cracks of the boxes and around the edges. Often, after the miners had gone into their cabins for supper, Carrie Crane and I would take our little blowers and the hairbrushes, which we kept for the purpose, and gather up the fine gold. We took it home, dried it in the oven, and blew the black sand from it. Sometimes we would find that our gold dust weighed to the amount of $1 or more. I had a little gutta percha inkwell which had traveled with us in the covered wagon from Denver. I kept my gold dust in it and carried it when I went to the store to buy rock candy. Carrie and I thought that this sweet was kept especially for the accommodation of little girl shoppers. The phrase rock and rye was a familiar one to us, but not meaningful. And just to explain that, rock and rye meant that the miners would take whiskey, this rock candy, and fruit and make a strange little alcoholic drink out of it. We found little on which to spend our gold dust. Sometimes the storekeeper had stick candy, candy beans, or ginger snaps. 25 cents was the least that was ever accepted across the counter. The amount of the purchase in gold dust would be measured out with blowers on scales. Once I bought my father a present of a shirt which cost $2.50 in gold dust, the only kind of money that I ever saw in Virginia City. A man would have entered another miner's sluice box at the risk of being shot on sight, but it amused the miners to have us little girls clean up after them. We were given so much encouragement that we actually thought we honored the men whose sluice boxes we chose to clean. And early on, Mary met her husband-to-be, Peter Ronan, and she describes him. Peter Ronan was a handsome, dashing-looking young man of medium height and well-proportioned. I have never since seen, not even in the son and daughter that resemble him, such flashing and expressive dark eyes. He had a straight, high-bridged nose and delicate nostrils, and slender, shapely hands and feet. All his features suggested well-bred and sensitive forebears. His hair was dark brown at the roots, shaded into the tawny of the sunburned miner and wayfarer. His mustache was dark auburn. I recall him at this period in a suit of brown broadcloth with cape, called a talma, to match. Usually he wore a broad-brimmed tan hat and high-heeled boots. I cannot paint the picture. Still less can I do justice to his rich and radiant personality. He was full of gaiety, of fun, of mimicking. Every day some encounter yielded him another humorous story. He laughed much and he loved much. He was open-hearted, open-handed, even too generous. Things of the mind appealed to him. There were spiritual depths to his nature for which I have no words. Peter Ronan was 30 years of age when we became engaged. In those 30 years he had done and dared and endured more than many men have in twice that time. Naturally, the close ties that knocked kin to kin had been not exactly broken, but stretched wide, as often happens even today when great distances and varied interests intervene. He had traveled far, very far, from the little village of Antigonish, Nova Scotia, where he was born on June 1st, 1838, the sixth child in a family of 8. And Mary continues to talk about life on the reservation, the Flathead Reservation, with her husband, since he was the Indian agent there. I have to say I found that part a little less intriguing than her former travels. And she lived in a lot of different places and did a lot of different things. But her early childhood I found really, really fascinating. She did have this to say about the Indians. Thus we always found our Indians loyal and true. 17 Nez Perce warriors, in desperation to get back to their homes in the valley of the winding waters, had terrorized the people of 3 states, Montana, Idaho, and Washington. I am not condoning the murders that they committed, but it was my experience always to find the Indian more sinned against than sinning. I thought that was an interesting observation she made. She also goes on to say, this incident and the continued and growing friendliness of the Indians, including Eagle of the Light and his band, during all these turbulent times, sealed our trust in my husband's charges. That trust was never betrayed in all our years among the Indians. Not even was it betrayed in small matters. Indeed, as the years passed, we came never to shut a window or door in our house except against the weather. And no door or window was ever locked. The Indians might stalk into the house at any time of the day. They never came with sinister intent, nor took anything, nor did any harm. They either stated their business to some member of the family, or told what their hearts wanted. Their hearts wanted many things, but they accepted denials with stoicism, or they squatted down idly in silence until the Spirit moved them to depart. If I requested them to go, they did so quietly and without offense. Of course, I always endeavored to put such requests tactfully and to accompany them with little gifts, such as a bit of sugar, a piece of bread, or an apple. Yeah, I found that book. I found that book really interesting, and definitely recommend it, especially to anyone living in Montana. Well, Colorado too, because she spent quite a bit of time over there. But I thought it was good. It was well worth the read. I bought it on Amazon fairly inexpensively, and I really enjoyed that. And another pattern I've been working on is these little long johns. The pattern is by Susan B. Anderson. Yeah, I've been going a little crazy on them. Here's the back side of them. They have a little butt flap on them. They're so cute. Yeah, I've been making quite a few of them. They're a little fiddly to get started, but after you get through the first few rows, they go pretty easily. And, they don't take up much yarn. It's been a great way to use up a lot of my scraps and stuff left over from some of my socks. They've really been fun. I've decided I had a lot of people that needed one of these. And while I was recording down by the lake, Kim walked around, and here's some of the pictures he was taking. I think he was really entertaining himself. It's nice to see him get out with his camera. And he said he was pretty sure this was a beaver because he saw a pretty big tail while he was watching this. That's pretty interesting. So in my last podcast, which I did all about Fiber Fusion Northwest, I had bought this skein of yarn from Apple Fiber Studio as a giveaway. And to help with this giveaway, I'm going to introduce our judge. This is Nico. He loves mashed yams and berry smoothies. He doesn't like afternoon naps, but he has been known to sleep for over 2 hours in the afternoon. He loves oat milk and crunchy toddler snacks and enjoys calling everyone Mama. So what I did for this giveaway was I attached a name to every skein for all the entries I had. I think there were 21 entries. And here you get a good look at my best yarn stash. These are all my best yarns. The idea was for Nico to come into the room and he needed to pick up a skein of yarn. I didn't want him to just touch one. I want him to pick one up and choose it. But that kid can be pretty fickle, and he can be in the mood and he cannot be in the mood. And for the first 3 attempts, he was not in the mood. He would touch them, but he wasn't picking anything up. I didn't want to just go with that. So we kept trying. Sometimes he cooperates, sometimes he does not. Once again, just touching it. But finally, the 4th time, it worked.
We have a winner! Yeah!
And the winner is Penny from Colorado. And her comment was, I used to drive a truck cross country and we hauled lots of apples out of Washington State. You remember you had to use Apple in your comment in order to be entered. So Penny, if you could get a hold of me and private message me your address, that would be great. You can contact me um, on Ravelry as Victoria Jean, on Instagram, Victoria Jean W, or you can email me at vjwilliams54@gmail.com and I will get that out to you. Congratulations, Penny. And another thing I finished was my iced cardigan that I made to go with the cardigan make-along that Linda at Joey Scarf was doing with Jan of Jan's Crafty Crochet. And here's our crazy deer helping me model it. I really enjoyed making this cardigan. It took all of a week. This was made from worsted weight yarn from my stash. That was one of my goals. I didn't want to have to go out and buy new yarn to make this sweater, and it worked out great. So the make-along ends January 15th. So you know what? You still got time to get in that. It was really fun. Okay, I think that's all of the knitting content, and we have arrived at the odds and ends part. We do a lot of vegan cooking around here. And if you know a vegan or you are one, this is one of our favorite recipes. It's called Slow Cooker Vegan Butternut Squash Mac and Cheese. And I will link the recipe below. It's really easy and it turns out really delicious. It would be a nice thing to serve if you are having a vegan over for dinner and you're not sure what to make them. I think they would really like this. It's one of our favorites. I really like it quite a bit. And while the weather was still nice, Kim wanted to get his garlic in the ground, and so he showed Russell how to use the broad fork. I don't know how much help Russell was, but he really had a good time. And Halloween happened. Russell wanted his whole family to be ghosts, so that turned out to be pretty easy. I painted Kim and I's faces. We didn't do a lot for Halloween this year, but it was still fun. We all went to the local school carnival, and everybody really enjoyed that. My daughter Vanessa also put Nico in this bee costume that I made for Russell 3 years ago. That's Nico on the left. He is 16 months, and that was Russell on the right at 7 months. What a difference. So this outfit is called Honeybee Baby Romper Set by Marceline Simonetto. Simonati. Let's try that. And I remember what a challenge it was when I made this. That was a lot of work. My friend Carol had to help me with the little bit of crocheting it required because I had no idea how to do it. That seems like such a long time ago. I'm impressed my daughter still has that outfit. They're so cute in that. And while we're talking about the boys, I would like to update everybody on Nico's eczema. Thank you, Jean, for the necklace idea. He is wearing that. He seems to be improving, And my daughter thinks it's due to probably the necklace. Also, they've been using the Devil's Club salve from my friend Britt in Washington State, has been making that. And they have also upped his probiotics. And I want to really thank Valerie for your info too. It's been really great hearing from viewers that have dealt with the same kind of problems. I appreciate that so much. I can't tell you how much that means to me and to my daughter. So thank you very much. We keep this baby fence around our wood stove so that Nico doesn't get to it. There's my daughter's cat, Josie. She loves laying by the fire. But the baby fence has worked out really great. I've been using it to dry my hand knit socks on lately. That's come in really handy. And that cat, Josie. She's a heat lover. She acts like she just can't get close enough to that wood stove. And my daughter Vanessa passed her yoga certification. She not only passed it, she passed it with flying colors. The people that judged it said she did such a great job. She was so thorough. I am not going to make you watch this because we did yoga for an hour and a half that day and had to record the whole thing. That was a lot of work for me, an hour and a half worth of yoga. No, I'm not going to make you watch it all. I will make you watch a little bit. But I'm really proud of her. She worked really hard to get that done. And our 10-year-old chicken, Ginger, died November 6th. Most chickens live to around 8 years old. And so if you don't mind, let's have a small ode to Ginger the chicken. She was our most obstinate hen. When we lived in Boise, she would tiptoe along the fence between our house and our neighbor's house, which included a big dog on their side. She would cross dangerous territory to avoid the gate, to get around the gate that Kim had built, just so she could reach our green, beautiful backyard, which was full of plants just waiting for her to dig up. She made the long trip with us from Boise in the back of our camper shell with 3 other of our hens and our 3 cats. She was always our scruffiest hen. She always looked to me as if she'd been busy in an alley somewhere. She is the next to the last of the hens we brought with us from Boise. Hazel, at 7 years old, is still with us. And Ginger was just the sweetest little baby chick. We're going to miss that chicken. And have you all been watching any Christmas movies? I watched Let It Snow, which was about teenagers, and so I almost didn't watch it, but it was really pretty cute. And I also enjoyed A Santa Girl. Both of those were on Netflix. Have you been watching any that you would recommend? Any new ones? I'd love to hear about it. So that's going to about wrap it up. I saw this sign while Kim and I were eating lunch, and it really spoke to me today. It seems like if you try hard enough, you can always find something to be thankful for. And I just want to thank everybody for watching. For putting up with my face or lack of face in this episode. I'm really sorry about that. There's nothing I can do about it. I hope things improve next time. I just want to wish everybody in the U.S. a happy Thanksgiving. And I know Canada already had theirs. And again, thank you all for watching. It really means a lot to me. And goodbye from Montana, and I hope I see you next time. happy to report that Brownie seems to be over her broodiness. She's out of the nesting box and seems to be back to her old self.
Howdy to you, partner. I like your hat.
Howdy, partner.
Hey.
Howdy, partner. Could you give my daddy, daddy, do. Mister, we want to. One for the master, bye-bye, you baby, baby. Da, 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 da. I did it.
Da 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 da.
You did? I saw you were gonna take a picture of me.
I am right now.
Daddy, daddy, no. Yes, sir, we want. Wow, Mr. Boo boo, black sheep, baby.
All right. Nice job, Russell.
Okay.
Thanks, bud. Yeah. Thanks, bud. Move fast, man. Yeah.
And this used to be my morning routine with the ducklings. They would take a bath while I cleaned their cage. And they always got pretty crazy. But guess who went outside? Yes, it's celebration time. They met their mom and dad for the first time. I'm sure their mom and dad were like, When did we have 5 kids we didn't know about? We got them all acclimated to everybody. Everyone's getting along. I don't think things could be going better than they are right now. It's great. I was pretty concerned that Huck was going to attack them. He loves hanging out with them. That's the 5 ducklings with their dad. He loves them. They follow him around. He follows them around. They're a joy to watch.